The massive black ships hung in space like dead stars, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Admiral Kethma the Destroyer stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring down at the small blue-green world spinning. Below, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched his fleet of 800 warships take position around the peaceful planet, the communications officer, a smaller Draknari with nervous clicking sounds, approached carefully. "Sir, the Galactic Council has received your message. They are requesting more time to consider your demands." Kethma red eyes glowed brighter, and his massive 14-foot frame turned slowly. The bridge crew stepped backward in fear. When the Admiral was angry, people died. More time. His voice was like grinding stone. "I gave them 72 hours. How much time has passed?" 71 hours and 43 minutes, sir." The Warlord's laugh was cold and sharp. 17 minutes. They have 17 minutes to decide." He gestured toward the planet below with one of his massive clawed hands. "Do they see my ships? Do they count them? 800 of the most powerful war vessels ever built, each one, capable of burning their pathetic worlds to ash on the planet's surface, in the great crystal dome that housed the Galactic Council. Chaos ruled the halls. Representatives from dozens of species ran back and forth, their voices mixing into a storm of panic. The insect-like Vespians burst in fear. The tall, the Nethori chimed like broken bells. The floating gas beings called Nebulans flickered with worry. He cannot be serious. Wheezed Ambassador Vexelar through his breathing apparatus. No one would actually destroy 12 civilian worlds over mining rights. "You do not know Kethma," replied Commander Zilka, her blue skin pale with fear. "He has burned entire star systems because someone looked at him wrong. He once destroyed a moon because he did not like its color." The giant view screen showed the Draknari fleet in all its terrible glory. Each ship was the size of a city, painted in the blood-red colors of conquest. Weapon ports glowed with deadly energy. Fighter craft swarmed between the larger vessels like angry insects. Our combined fleets could not stop even 1/10 of his force, admitted General Verton, his crystalline body dim with defeat. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their shields can turn away our strongest weapons. Their guns can punch through our armor like paper." In the center of the great hall, the Emergency Council sat at a circular table made from rare starwood. 12 species, 12 different views on how to handle the crisis. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to surrender immediately. A few suggested running away to another galaxy entirely. "We must consider his demands," said Elder Primrose, her ancient voice shaking. 3-star systems. It is not such a terrible price to pay for peace. "Those systems contain 17 billion lives," snapped Captain Rexel. "Would you hand them over to a monster? Better than watching 12 worlds burn," Primrose replied sadly. The timer on the main screen showed 16 minutes remaining, then 15, then 14. "Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested Diplomat Winter. "Offer him something else. More tribute, better mining rights, something to satisfy his greed." "Kethma is not greedy," said Commander Zilka quietly. "He is bored. Conquest is a game to him. He has won so many times that victory has lost its meaning. He burns worlds to feel something." 13 minutes. 12, 11, sir. Came a small voice from the back of the chamber. "Sir, there is one option we have not tried." All eyes turned to see a young aide, barely old enough to serve in the council halls. His hands shook as he held up a data pad. "Speak quickly," ordered General Verton. "The humans, sir, Earth joined the council only 6 months ago. Their military is small, their technology basic, but their diplomatic record is unusual. Unusual how? As Delta knows, the ade's voice grew stronger. They have never lost a diplomatic mission, not once. They have talked pirates into becoming merchants. They convinced the warrior clans of Vega to become peacekeepers. They even got the Machine Collective to agree to treaty terms. 10 minutes remained. The humans, Commander Zilka looked confused. But they are so new, so young. What could they possibly do against Kethma that we cannot? I do not know, sir. But Earth has already responded to our request for help. They are sending their best diplomat, Ambassador Minho Park. His ship will arrive in 8 minutes. The council chamber fell silent except for the steady countdown. 9 minutes. 8 minutes. 7. One human. Whispered Elder Primrose. One human against the most feared warlord in the galaxy. It is madness, said General Verton. It is. Hope, replied the young aide. 6 minutes. 5. 4. On his flagship above. Kethma watched the tiny human ship approach his massive fleet. It was so small that his sensors almost missed it. Like a mouse approaching a pride of lions. Shall I destroy it, sir? Asked his weapons officer. No, Kethma replied, his red eyes gleaming with interest. Let this human come. I am curious to see what kind of creature thinks it can face me with nothing but words. 3 minutes. 2. 1. The fate of billions hung in the balance. The small human transport ship looked like a toy next to the massive Draknari warships. Ambassador Minho Park sat calmly in the pilot seat, watching the enormous black holes slide past his tiny window. Each enemy ship was bigger than most. Space stations, their weapon ports glowed red like angry eyes. Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 7. Came a harsh voice over the radio. Any sudden movements and you will be destroyed. Understood. Park replied in his quiet voice. Thank you for the guidance. His hands were steady as he guided the ship into the docking bay. The world breaker was so huge that the bay could have held 50 ships his size. Draknari soldiers in black armor surrounded his ship the moment it landed. Their weapons were aimed at his door. Park stepped out wearing simple grey clothes and carrying only a small wooden box. He was not tall or strong-looking. His black hair was neat and his face was calm. The soldiers towered over him. But he showed no fear. Move, growled the squad leader, pointing with his rifle toward a long corridor. Park walked between the guards, looking round with genuine interest. The walls were covered with trophies from conquered worlds. Weapons, armor, flags, and stranger things lined the hallway. Each piece told the story of another civilization that had fallen to Draknari might. That blade, Park said suddenly, stopping in front of a curved sword with a silver handle. Velthri work, the metal folding. Technique is remarkable, 47 layers, if I am not mistaken. The god captain's eyes narrowed behind his helmet. How do you know Velthri steel? I studied their craftsmanship during my time on Kepler Station. They were master sword makers before the war came to their world. Park's voice was respectful. Not sad. This blade would have taken months to forge properly. The guards exchanged glances. No prisoner had ever shown interest in their trophy collection. Most begged for mercy or threatened revenge. This human seemed more like a museum visitor than a condemned man. They reached the throne room doors, massive panels of black metal decorated with images of burning worlds. The doors opened with a sound like thunder, revealing a chamber that could have held a small city. At the far end, on a throne made from crystallized asteroid rock, sat Kethma the Destroyer. The Warlord was even more impressive than the stories claimed. His body was covered in natural armor plates that gleamed like black glass. Forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel. His head was elongated, with burning red eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Battle scars covered his chest and arms, like a map of his victories. So, Kethma's voice boomed across the chamber. Earth sends me a librarian. Park walked forward without fear, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed politely. I am Ambassador Minho Park, representing humanity and the Galactic Council. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Meet with you. Kethma laughed. It sounded like breaking rock. I did not agree to meet. I agreed to watch you beg before I crush your pathetic worlds. I see. Park's voice remained calm. Then you are not the warrior I expected. The throne room fell silent. Every Dragnari present held their breath. No one spoke to their lord that way and lived. Kethma's eyes blazed brighter. What did you say? I said, you are not the warrior I expected. Park looked round the trophy room again. These are impressive conquests. But where is the challenge? Where is the glory in defeating enemies who cannot fight back? The Warlord rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across the room. Are you questioning my strength, human? Not your strength, Park replied. Your courage. Anyone can destroy the weak. That takes no skill, no honor. A true warrior seeks worthy opponents, not easy victories. Kethma's claws extended with a sharp click. You think you are a worthy opponent. You, who comes here with no weapons, no army, no power. Park smiled slightly. I think you are bold, Kethma. How long has it been since you faced a real challenge? Years, decades. When did you last feel the thrill of uncertain victory? The Warlord stopped moving. His red eyes studied the small human with no interest. I have a proposal, Park continued. Not surrender, not tribute, a contest, you and me. Winner takes all. All, you win. You get your 3-star systems and the galaxy surrender. If I win, you withdraw your fleet and leave the council worlds in peace. Kethma's laugh started low and grew louder. You challenge me to combat. You would not last 3 seconds against my weakest soldier. Not combat, Park said, opening his wooden box. Inside was an ancient game board made of dark wood, with a grid of lines carved into its surface. Something more interesting, a test of minds, not muscles. The Warlord leaned forward, curious despite himself. What is this? Borduk. Some call it Go, the oldest strategy game my people know. Simple rules, infinite possibilities. Park's eyes met Kethma's burning gaze, unless you prefer easier challenges. The insult hung in the air like a thrown sword. Every Dragnari in the room waited to see how their lord would respond to such boldness. Kethma's scarred face split into a terrible grin. Accepted, human. When you lose, I will make your death memorable. When you lose, Park replied quietly, you will learn something new. The contest was set. The ancient wooden board sat between them like a battlefield waiting for a war. Park placed the box of stones on the table, half black and half white. The clicking sound they made was soft in the huge throne room. Kethma stared down at the symbol, grid of lines carved into the dark wood. This is your great challenge. The Warlord's voice carried disappointment. A child's game played with pebbles. The rules are simple, Park said, taking a white stone between his fingers. We take turns placing stones on the intersections. The goal is to control territory and capture your opponent's pieces. But simple rules can create complex battles. Kethma picked up a black stone with one massive claw. The stone looked tiny in his grip. How long does this usually take? Sometimes minutes, sometimes days. It depends on the players. Park placed his first stone near the center of the board. This particular board is special. My great-great-grandfather German carved it during the resource wars of 2157. The Warlord placed his stone with a sharp click. "Tell me about these wars." Earth was dying, Park said, studying the board before making his next move. The oceans were poisoned. The air was toxic. Most of the forests were gone. Nations fought over the last clean water and fertile soil. "Who won?" Kethmer asked, placing another stone. "Everyone lost, and everyone survived." Park's stone joined the growing pattern. "My ancestor was a farmer named Young Ho. When the bombs fell and the crops died, he replanted. When acid rain killed the new plants, he planted again. 17 times he lost everything. On the 18th try, the seeds finally grew." Kethmer paused with a stone halfway to the board. Why did he not give up? Because his family was hungry. Park's voice was matter-of-fact. Giving up meant death. Trying again meant hope. The game continued. Neither player dominated the early moves. Park's white stones seemed scattered and weak. Kethmer's black stones formed strong groups that controlled large areas of the board. "Your ancestor sounds foolish," the Warlord said. "A warrior would have taken food from others instead of waiting for plants to grow." "Some did try that approach," Park agreed, capturing one of Kethmer's stones in a clever trap. "But stolen food runs out. Grown food can last forever if you tend it properly." Kethmer frowned at the captured stone. He had not seen the trap until it was too late. "Continue your story." "After Young Ho came Sun He the engineer. The Mars colonies were cut off from Earth for 3 years during the Isolation Wars. No supply ships, no communication, no help." Park placed another stone, this one connecting two of his scattered groups. The life support systems were failing. The food was almost gone. Everyone expected to die. But they did not die. Kethmer guessed, studying the board more carefully now. Park's seemingly random stones were starting to form patterns. Sun He rebuilt the air processors using spare parts from broken equipment. She grew food in soil made from recycled waste. She kept for 1,000 people alive using nothing but creativity and determination. Park captured another black stone. When the supply ships finally came, they found the colony stronger than when they left. The Warlord's next move was more cautious. This human was better at the game than he appeared. "What lesson am I supposed to learn from this?" "That survival is not about being the strongest. It is about being the most adaptable." Park's white stones now controlled a significant portion of the board. "Humans are not the fastest or toughest species in the galaxy, but we are very good at surviving impossible situations." Hours passed. The game grew more complex with each move. Word spread through both fleets that their leaders were engaged in some kind of contest. Draknari officers gathered at the edges of the throne room to watch. On the human ship, the small crew monitored their ambassadors' vital signs. "Tell me more stories," Kethmer demanded. He was finding the tales as interesting as the game itself. Park spoke of Dongyan the teacher, who preserved human knowledge through the AI suppression centuries by memorizing entire libraries. Of Yunji the medic, who treated plague victims knowing she would catch the disease herself. Of Hyunwoo the pilot, who flew his ship into a black hole to save a planet full of strangers. Each story seemed to match the moves on the board. Park's stones advanced not through brute force, but through patience and careful planning. He would sacrifice pieces to gain better positions. He would accept small losses to prevent larger ones. "You are not playing to win," Kethmer realized suddenly. "You are playing not to lose." "Is there a difference?" Park asked. The Warlord considered this. In all his battles, he had focused on crushing his enemies quickly and completely. This human played a different kind of war, a war of endurance and adaptation. "My people have a saying," Park continued, placing a stone that seemed to give up valuable territory. "The nail that stands out gets hammered down." But we also say, even if you fall 7 times, get up 8 times, Kethma said. At the board, his black stones controlled more space. But somehow Park's white stones were everywhere. They connected in ways he had not expected. They supported each other across great distances. How the Warlord whispered. Park smiled. Patience and the knowledge that sometimes losing a battle is the only way to win the war. The contest was far from over. But already the galaxy's most feared warrior was learning that there were different kinds of strength. The game had been going for 3 days now. Word had spread through both fleets like wildfire. Draknari soldiers crowded the edges of the throne room, watching their invincible lord struggle against a simple human with a wooden board. On nearby ships, officers placed bets on the outcome. Even the human crew had stopped their normal duties to monitor the contest. Kethma had not slept. His red eyes burned with frustration as he stared at the board. What had started as an easy victory was turning into the most difficult battle of his long life. Park's white stones seemed weak and scattered, but every time the Warlord tried to crush them, they slipped away like smoke. "Your move," Park said quietly. He looked tired but calm, sipping water from a simple cup. The Warlord placed his stone with more force than necessary. The click echoed through the chamber. "Tell me about the Great Plague," he demanded. "You mentioned it yesterday, but did not finish the story." Park studied the board before responding. "It started on Europa Station in 2298. A mining accident released something from deep in the ice. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years. A weapon. A disease. It spread faster than fire through oxygen. Within 6 months, it had reached every human world. The death rate was 90%. Park placed his stone in what looked like a losing position. Civilization collapsed. Governments fell. The lucky ones died quickly. Kethma's claws tapped against the table. But humans survived. How? The woman named Minji. She was not a doctor or a scientist. Just a mother with 2 children on a farming world called New Soul. Park's voice became softer. When the plague reached her planet, she took her kids and 47 other children into the old mining tunnels beneath the mountains. The Warlord leaned forward despite himself, and she kept them alive for 42 years, underground, cut off from the rest of humanity. She taught them how to grow food in the dark, how to purify water, how to make medicine from tunnel moss. She died when the children were adults. But not before she had trained them to survive. Park captured a group of black stones that Kethma had thought was safe. The Warlord stared at the board in shock. When had the humans set up that trap? 42 years, Kethma repeated. 1 woman, 47 children. When the plague finally burned itself out, search teams found communities like Minji's all across human space, hidden in caves, underwater cities, space stations drifting in the void. Each group had found a different way to survive. Each had preserved some piece of human knowledge and culture. The game continued. Kethma began to notice something strange. Every story Park told seemed to mirror the moves on the board. The human was not just playing a game. He was teaching a lesson. "You sacrifice your pieces," the Warlord observed. Watching Park give up another stone to save a larger group. Like, this Minji woman sacrificed her life for her children. Sacrifice is not loss if something greater is saved. Park replied. Minji died, but her children lived. Her children had children today. New Soul has 50 million people. Kethma made his next move more carefully. This human thought in patterns he did not understand. "What about your warriors? Surely humans have great fighters." "We do, but not the kind you might expect." Park told him about Sunjay, the general, who won the Battle of Titan by retreating for 6 months, drawing the enemy deeper into a trap. About Heron the pilot, who saved a refugee convoy by flying directly into an enemy fleet, knowing she would die but buying time for others to escape. They all died, Kethma pointed out. They all won. Park corrected. Victory is not about surviving. It is about achieving your goal. Heron's goal was to save the refugees. She succeeded. The Warlord stared at his claws, thinking, all his life, he had measured victory by how many enemies he killed, how many worlds he conquered. This human spoke of victory in completely different terms. My goal, Kethma said slowly, has always been to be the strongest warrior in the galaxy. And have you achieved it? Park asked. Yes. No one can defeat me in battle. Then why are you here, threatening peaceful worlds? Why not retire to enjoy your victory? The question hit like a physical blow. Kethma had never thought about it that way. He was the strongest. He had proven it 1,000 times. So I did. He keep fighting. Because the Warlord began, then stopped. He did not know the answer. Park placed another stone. The move looked weak. But Kethma was beginning to understand that the humans' weak moves were often the most dangerous. Once, perhaps, Park said gently, being the strongest is not the same as being the greatest. The words hung in the air, round the room. Draknari officers shifted uncomfortably. Their lord, who had never shown doubt in anything, sat in silent thought on the board. The white stones were everywhere now, not controlling territory through force, but through connection, through patience, through sacrifice that led to greater strength. Kethma looked at the game, looked at the human, and began to understand that he was learning something far more important than strategy. He was learning what true strength meant. The final stone fell with a soft click that seemed to echo through the entire galaxy. Park's white stone completed a pattern that had been building for days, connecting groups across the board in ways that Kethma had never seen coming. The Warlord stared at the wooden surface, his forearms motionless, his burning red eyes wide with disbelief. Every black stone he had placed with such confidence was now trapped, surrounded, captured, not through brute force or sudden attack, but through a web of connections that had grown stone by stone, move by move, story by story. Impossible, Kethma whispered. His voice, which had shaken planets, was barely audible. I controlled more territory. I had stronger positions. I was winning. Park sat back in his chair, looking as tired as he felt. You were playing the game. You know, I was playing the game that needed to be played. You sacrificed everything, the Warlord said, his claws tracing the patterns on the board. Piece after piece, territory after territory. How could losing so much lead to winning everything? Because I was not trying to win, Park replied quietly. I was trying to teach. The throne room was silent except for the sound of breathing. Hundreds of Draknari officers stood frozen, watching their invincible lord try to understand his first defeat. On ships throughout the fleet, crews gathered round communication screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. Teach me what? Kethma asked. Park gestured to the board where white stones now surrounded and controlled the black ones, that there are different kinds of strength. You have spent your life proving you can destroy anything, but destruction is easy. A child can break things, the fool can burn worlds. The Warlord's scarred face twisted with confusion and something else, something that might have been pain. Then what is true strength? The power to create, to protect, to choose mercy when you could choose violence. Park's voice was gentle but firm. Every story I told you was about someone who could have given up, could have chosen the easy path, but decided to endure instead, to sacrifice for others, to build something better. Kethma stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the room. I have conquered 1,000 worlds. I have never known defeat. I am the most feared warrior in the galaxy. And what has it brought you? Park asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kethma looked round his throne room, at the trophies of his victories, at the officers who feared him, at the fleet that obeyed him out of terror rather than respect. Nothing. He said finally, "It has brought me nothing but emptiness." Park nodded sadly. Fear is not loyalty. Conquest is not achievement. You rule an empire built on terror. But what happens when you are gone? What legacy do you leave behind? The Warlord's claws clenched and unclenched. I do not know. The humans I told you about. They are remembered not for what they destroyed, but for what they saved. Young-Ho's gardens still grow on Earth. Sunhee's engineering principles are taught in schools across the galaxy. Minji's children founded. Cities, their strength lives on because they used it to build, not to tear down. Kethma walked to the great window that looked out over his fleet. 800 warships, each one a monument to his power. Each one a tool for spreading fear and death across the stars. You came here to make me surrender, he said without turning round. No. Park replied, standing and carefully packing away. The game stones. I came here to offer you something better than victory. What could be better than victory? Purpose. The chance to be remembered as something greater than a destroyer. Park's voice carried across the vast chamber. The galaxy does not need another conqueror, Kethma. It needs a protector, someone strong enough to guard the weak, wise enough to choose peace over war. The Warlord turned back to face the small human. You think I could be such a person? I think you are the only person strong enough to make that choice. Anyone can destroy. Only the truly powerful can choose not to. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the stars watched and waited. On thousands of worlds, billions of lives hung in the balance. Then Kethma activated his command console. His voice boomed across all fleet frequencies, reaching every ship, every crew member, every weapon system. Draknari fleet, this is your commander. All vessels will power down weapons immediately. All ships will return to home space. The campaign is over. The response was instant chaos. Officers shouted questions. Ship captains demanded explanations. The communications channels exploded with confusion and disbelief. Sir. His weapons officer's voice shook with uncertainty. What about the mining worlds? What about the tribute? Kethma looked at Park, then at the game board where white stones had surrounded black ones not through force, but through patience and wisdom. Today I learned that true victory is not conquest. He announced to his fleet, to the galaxy, to history itself. It is choosing when not to fight. The Draknari Empire will no longer spread through destruction. We will earn our place in the galaxy through protection, not predation. The most feared warrior in galactic history had discovered something more valuable than all his victories combined. He had found wisdom dot and across the galaxy. Civilizations that had trembled at the mention of his name began to whisper of something new. Something impossible. Hope.